Hello, welcome to my ePortfolio presentation for the Masters of Science in Education Curriculum and Instruction program. My name is Stephanie Hay, and as I have previously stated, I am in the General Curriculum and Instructional program. I am originally from Seattle, Washington, but I have lived in a rural town in Helena, Arkansas for the past 6 years. I have a teaching license in secondary ELA, and I taught 9th and 10th grade English for the past 5 years before transitioning to be an instructional coach this year for 1st and 2nd year teachers. I work across 3 different school districts with 18 teachers ranging from self-contained kindergarten to AP chemistry. My teachers come in at various levels of experience in teaching, in addition have various skill sets, and so my coaching is extremely diversified for these teachers. I would also like to note that one of the school districts in which I support is the school district in which I taught. So the work that I do currently is extremely personal to me. So I chose to highlight CAEP 1.1 standard, demonstrate understanding of and ability to apply knowledge and skills specific to their discipline. I chose this standard for a few reasons. The first is English language arts is a subject of which I'm passionate. Not only did I teach English language arts, but I was able to do so in a manner that was culturally relevant. And for the past few years of teaching, or for the most recent years of teaching, I was very intentional in how I planned content and how I planned for students to engage in that content. The second reason is that I hope to go into consulting in the future with an emphasis on culturally relevant pedagogy and practices in the humanities arena. Lastly, I chose this standard because I struggled greatly with connecting my artifacts to the standard, and I've worked extremely hard based on peer feedback, based on feedback from my professor, and based on friends who are not in this course to really choose articles that reflect the standard, as well as craft rationales that directly and explicitly connect my artifacts to the standard. So my first artifact comes from my final paper from my CNT 709 course, Foundations of Curriculum and Instruction. This course served as the entry point to the Curriculum and Instruction program. The course began with an overview of major theorists, ideologies, and shifts in curriculum in the United States over time. From that, we looked at the practical aspect of ideology into the present-day classrooms and then discussed the future of curriculum studies. As our final project in this course, we crafted a 3-part philosophy of curriculum. This artifact allowed me to examine culturally relevant pedagogy as a vehicle for teaching English language arts, skills, and standard. I would like to say that I have only chosen to upload part of the paper because the part of the paper in which I uploaded directly connects with the standard in which I am presenting. Previously to this program, I had an interest in curriculum development, but it wasn't until this course that I dove deep into the understanding of curriculum and began connecting with different theorists to which I aligned. 3 theorists that I highlighted in my paper and having conversation with one another over the course of the time of curriculum development are Franklin Bobbitt, John Dewey, and Gloria Ladson-Billings. I discussed concepts from Bobbitt's scientific method in curriculum making and John Dewey's My Pedagogical Creed. These theorists, in early study of curriculum development, both discussed curriculum as needing to be reflective of a student's community. Ladson-Billings, in her 1995 work toward a theory of culturally relevant pedagogy, furthers this discussion and then coins the term culturally relevant pedagogy. This concept not only agrees with Dewey and Bobbitt in that curriculum should be reflective of a student's community, but it widens that idea in that all aspects of a student's community are taken into account, and then I would say takes the concept further to state that the student's culture should be seen as an asset and should be incorporated and leveraged in the classroom. When deciding to include this portion of my final paper as my artifact, I thought through what artifact would demonstrate my shift in curriculum knowledge for English language arts over the course of my time in this program, as well as what artifact would align with the work I'm most passionate about and want to work towards. The ideas in this paper served as a catalyst for my practice as an educator that school year. One example of how I was able to incorporate culturally relevant pedagogy into my classroom came from my spring semester of teaching last year. I taught the novel Black Boy by Richard Wright using literature circles. In being responsive to not only my students' racial and ethnic backgrounds, I taught a book that reflected their geographical backgrounds as well. Building on students' background knowledge is extremely important as an English teacher. And through small group discussions and lessons with my students, I was able to leverage students' background knowledge and experiences in the discussion. Because Richard Wright grew up in the Delta, specifically in parts of Arkansas in which my students currently live, students were able to relate so much to him. Their engagement with the text and with one another increased as well. I saw positive outcomes not just in student literature circles, in which I was able to sit on small group discussions, but I was able to hear students craft critical ideas from Richard Wright and critique different parts of society, as well as his experience in connecting their own identity with his work. And so students were able to make extremely genuine and authentic text-to-life connections that furthered their engagement and success with the course. My second artifact comes from my ELPS course, ELPS 811, Constructivist Learning Technology. This course focused on constructivist learning theories through the application of technology facilitating student learning. The class heavily focused on math concepts, but I was able to translate the concepts into my English class. For my final paper, I created a lesson plan with a learning activity centered on technology. The lesson plan was based on the findings from the theories discussed over the time of the course. I've attached the first 3 pages of the paper in my portfolio as they demonstrate a connection to the standard. As previously mentioned, the class focused heavily on math examples. The lesson plan is a close reading lesson in which students are asked to complete a layered reading of a chunk of James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son. Students will read first for fluency, then for comprehension, and finally for analysis. The part of the lesson plan which the final paper is focused on is the analysis piece. Students will have a culminating question to answer at the end of the lesson, and throughout the lesson will engage in an activity in which they create, justify, and discuss claims to 3 analysis questions. These analysis questions will guide students into their own thinking for their responses to the culminating question, and will give students a chance to share ideas of one another and examine their own validity and the validity of other responses through examining textual evidence. To make the class content relevant to my classroom, specifically for this assignment, I focus on the construction of knowledge mentioned by D.H. Johansen from an English language arts perspective. While this assignment primarily focused on the technology I use to teach my lesson, this assignment demonstrates my ability to craft an ELA lesson in which students can analyze text, create and justify claims, and engage in the dialogue with other students. These staple skills ensure that students are able to craft, refine, and share their voices. Although I was not able to use technology for all of my close reading lessons, reading, writing, and sharing student thinking are all skills that remain consistent in my classroom. Technology was just one vehicle by which these skills could be facilitated, but these skills also presented themselves in whole class discussions through Socratic seminars, which are text-based and focus on larger questions, through literature circles, in which students take their own viewpoints and take different lenses and engage in smaller group discussions, and in silent discussions, in which students use certain activities such as chalk talk to discuss various parts of the text. Knowing that technology was just a vehicle, I was able to further think through how students could get that same experience without the use of technology. And so, as connecting to the standard, students' experiences were enhanced because I was able to think through multiple ways for students to engage in text analysis, as well as sharing their thinking with others and with myself. All very important when considering English skills and standards. And so as I think about the big ideas and takeaways from the creation of both artifacts, something that I'm taking away, or this really, really big idea, is that culturally relevant pedagogy transcends courses. And so we see that I discussed this idea of culturally relevant pedagogy explicitly in my first artifact and not so much in the second artifact. But what I like to think is that the premise and the foundation of culturally relevant pedagogy is still there. It's something that I like naturally. The more I plan lessons, the more I think about how this is going to be culturally relevant to my students. And that is present through various courses. And so it's not just about the content that I'm including, but it's about how do I get students to interact. Knowing that collaboration and cooperation is a strong part of the community in which I exist, I want students' experiences in my classroom to reflect that as well. And so if students are doing literature circles in my first artifact, that's a form of cooperative engagement. And if students are discussing ideas via Google Classroom, that's another idea of cooperative engagement. Students are able to share their ideas with one another. They're able to build on one another's ideas. And they're able to, if they disagree, do so with the focus on making claims and justifying them. In addition, I have learned that the question of why am I doing this is just as important of a question as what am I doing. When I'm planning lessons, when I'm thinking of what to teach, when I'm thinking of how to plan activities, I have to ask myself, as an English teacher, what am I doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Not just what am I doing? Because I know that I want students, one, to create and refine and share their voice. And I want them to be able to do so through my English class. And so I'm going to have to prepare lessons that allow for students to do that. The last big idea or takeaway is the question of how is the student learning environment better because of what I've implemented. As an English teacher, there's so much that I want to incorporate. I feel like the work of an English teacher is never done, but I really have to be intentional in what am I teaching, knowing that standards in English, it's really awesome. Standards in English repeat themselves over the course of multiple texts. And so what am I really going to focus on that is going to improve students' learning environment and improve engagement and therefore improve their ability to engage with the text. So my next steps for me, I want to continue to write curriculum. If I can work for a company in which I can write culturally relevant curriculum, that is great. In addition, I want to consult with schools and districts specifically on culturally relevant curriculum. I just have a love of planning, and I am able to help teachers craft curriculum in the work that I do. And so being able to work with districts and understanding their context and understanding from that context how can we make our lessons and our teaching more engaging and reflective of student experiences is something that I'm loving and wanting to do. And then this summer I will be a school director for a summer program, and so I'll be coaching teacher coaches who are coaching new teachers. And so taking all of this into account, I have a larger perspective of what it means to be culturally relevant in the work that we're doing, especially because cultural relevancy is a large focus of our new teachers this year. And so everything that I'm able to take from these artifacts in my own classroom experiences, I'm able to provide other teacher coaches and new teachers as well. Here are my references from my artifacts. and I hope you have a great